You're listening to Mark of the Maker.
This is Chad Nichols and Nichols Damascus, and you're listening to the Mark of the Maker.
All right. There's a man, Mr. Chad Nichols, giving us a little read-in for the Mark of the Maker show. So like he said, you're listening to Mark of the Maker. I'm Mark Steiner, and this is our episode number, what is it? 29, which is super crazy.
Wow.
They're stacking up fast. Maybe not that fast, but they're stacking up. Okay, so let's check in and make sure we got everybody with us. So we have Tom Crine.
I'm here.
Okay, we have Mr. Michael Birch.
I'm here on my couch.
Banish the squeaky chair.
That's right.
All right, and we have Mr. Sean Kendrick.
Broadcasting live from Aberdeen, Ohio.
Well done. All right, and we have with us for episode 29, we promised that we would circle back and do this. So for episode number 29, we have special guest with us for an interview, Mr. David Sharp. Say hello, David.
Good morning.
He's pretty excited.
That's how we roll on Mark of the Maker. Wild and crazy.
That's the way David rolls.
Okay, so we did this Blade Show wrap-up episode. Seemed like people really liked it. We got lots of nice feedback. For folks that couldn't make it to the show, we had some clips in there so you could hear what was going on the floor. And folks seemed to really like that part of it. So that was pretty cool. We got some nice feedback. Thanks for talking to us about it. One great omission we made from the Blade Show wrap-up episode was some kind of ugly shit that happened. And Sean, you want to talk to folks about what that was?
Yeah. In all of our giddiness to talk about how fun Blade was and remember everybody we saw and all the conversations we had and all the cool knives we handled, we forgot to mention that there was a thief out and about at the Blade Show. I know that Jerry McGinnis had a spoke stolen, one of his Proline spokes. I know that the Jones brothers had a magic mushroom stolen, and Eric Kramer had a dagger stolen. And man, just a pox upon whoever the cocksucker is who stole it.
Yeah, maybe more than one person. Who knows?
Could be.
Dude, I mean, all three of those dudes are kind of in the same, part of the community, kind of the same crowd. I could see it being the same person for all three, unfortunately.
Well, and who knows how many we don't know about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, indeed.
That just sucks.
As much as it does suck, and this doesn't make it any better, but it's definitely not new, right? I mean, we've had knives stolen at the Gathering before. It seems like almost every year at the Gathering, something gets stolen. We know stuff's been stolen in past years at Blade. I know at the New York show, at least once, maybe more than once, I've heard about knives gone missing at the New York show. So it's unfortunate reality of the scene, a really, really unfortunate one, because you'd like to think that we're all way better people than that, but apparently not.
When they used to have the large knife show, gun shows here in Southern California before my time, Jim Merritt was telling me that they used to have, it was evidently a running scam year to year. Two very buxom women would go from table to table, one with a clipboard, the other one with a very revealing top. Can we interview you? And they would sit the clipboard down. And when they were done interviewing, you go to pick up the clipboard and scoop up whatever was underneath the clipboard until somebody figured or wasn't distracted and figured out what they were doing. But they said it happened quite a bit until people figured out what these women were doing.
Wow.
So my point is that it's law, knife shows and theft. I guess you got to keep on the watch.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Ever vigilant.
A tale of thieves and boobies.
Sneaky. It's crazy that would work.
I'm not at all surprised that worked, to be honest.
Yeah, no.
Not at a knife show, yeah.
But, it doesn't make it any less shitty. And I think, I don't remember if we talked about it in the show etiquette episode, but I mean, that's the unfortunate reality as a maker, right? Is you really kind of need to keep an eye on the table, and that's where sometimes it can be handy to have more than one person at the table.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it gets crazy at times, when you get, even if there's only like 4 or 5 people, there's only so much you can watch, right? I mean,
right.
It gets kind of crazy.
Marsh has those, he was telling me about, he has those kind of, they're more like a store window glass type of container at his booth.
Mm-hmm.
He said they were awesome. That kind of cut back on the people that weren't serious about the knives, just jacking with them. And plus they're behind the counter, kind of a interesting way to do it.
Oh yeah. They had those glass cases, like storefront style.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Man,
interesting.
I just hate having to do that, man. I mean, I get it, but
I mean, if that way where it's at. If someone wants to see it,
true,
take it out, hand it to them, let them check it out, put it back. Boom.
Right.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, I agree, Tom. You'd hate that you'd have to do that, but unfortunately, it seems like where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we hit on that. We really wanted to cover that in the Blade wrap-up episode. We completely forgot to have it in there. We thought about trying to stitch it in, and it wasn't going to work without sounding weird or something. So sorry to our friends that end up having stuff stolen, to makers that are going to shows. Got to keep an eye on your stuff. I know in Jerry's case, they had 3 people there, right? So
yeah,
like Michael said, stuff happens fast, and there's some very tricky people out there. So
wonder if he fell for the booby trick.
No judgment.
Tom's like, I'd totally get it if he did.
not that I'd fall for.
No, of course not. All right, let's get to what we intended to do here with episode 29, which is talk to David. And so David joined us for the Loveless episode and gave us some very cool insights that we very much would not have had without that. So it was very awesome of David to help us with that. But David's got his own story that is also very interesting. And we've talked before about if we had to have a theme or a slogan for the show, it'd be everybody has a story, and David's is certainly a little bit different too. So David, thanks for agreeing to join us.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And being so excited about it.
Man. Just calm down, all right?
I have one level until it comes to dogs and Broncos.
And that level is uber excited.
Exactly.
So, David, talk to us about the basics, man. Where did you grow up? Born and raised kind of stuff. Start at the beginning.
Let's see here. So I'm a Southern California native. Born and raised in, back in the day, it was a fairly small town, Banning, California. Kind of early on, the late 1800s, 1900s, it was an agricultural center for trees. So peach trees, almonds, all kinds of pit type fruit. And so it's a very weird, it's in a little literally the Banning Pass. It's about a mile from mountain range to mountain range. So everything from the ocean filters through there on its way to Palm Springs. And so it's a very weird little climate. And it started out as a retirement area. If you guys have ever seen Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure or whatever it's called, when he's in the dinosaurs in the end, the dinosaurs, that's kind of, they're on the outskirts of town. But
really,
anyways, yeah, early in my life,
I've actually been there.
Oh, okay. So that's like 5 minutes from
the dinosaurs anyway.
About 5 minutes from where I grew up.
Oh, very cool. I'm sorry to interrupt, David.
No, that's fine. And so, fairly small town, not, Banning's kind of, some people describe it as a mini South Central, very, very significant mix of different races and cultures and crime and drugs and all that stuff. So it was interesting from that perspective. Early on, I think from about 3 years old, I think it was about 7, my parents owned a bakery. So, of course, all the donuts and stuff that you could eat. And then my dad sold that. and
Nice.
went into the green industry, if you will. It's a fancy term for a lawn mowing guy, lawn maintenance.
Oh, nice.
And until I got older, that's all we did. Or, that I helped during the summer on his his little self-employed, another one of his adventures, and went to school, and until I went, graduated, never finished college. And I was in college when I was first diagnosed with cancer. Had that adventure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was in my early 20s. And most of this is boring. Like I said, we'll be done in 15 minutes. I don't have a very adventuresome
David,
life.
I've got one question right off the bat. You said bakery and donuts, all you can eat. Did you ever see how many hot donuts you can eat? Because those things are like, I don't know what it is, but they just disappear. And I was just curious, how many you could.
It's funny because, like my current size, nobody really knows me in the knife world. Prior to 9 years ago, and I wasn't ever this big. It was after all the chemo and radiation and stuff. I never had a sweet tooth. And only when I went through the last couple years of all those treatments that I developed a sweet tooth. So I can't answer your question. Oh. I think my favorite donut, because they had
such an opportunity.
Yeah. I think the best thing about the bakery.
Don't.
What's that?
Don't worry about not being able to answer that. That is possibly the worst question ever asked on Mark the Baker. How many donuts can a guest eat?
What? Well, see, he said I was born in 72.
Wow, it's pertinent to my interest, damn
it. So I was born in 72, and back then most things were still homemade. You didn't buy a bucket of eggs. You didn't buy the bag of mix and pour water in it. So, stuff was good. And so I understand the question. It's not like, I don't know, one of these a Winchell's or a Dunkin' Donuts or something where everything comes out of a bag or a box nowadays. So to me, it's a good question. So there, But the best thing about the bakery was after I came home from kindergarten, taking a nap on top of the freezer, and that always gets crazy looks. I'm not talking about an upright freezer. I'm talking about a chest freezer. The old chest freezers have kind of vibrated. They were warm on top. Take a nap. And also the loading dock was raised above the bakery. And so we always had our scooters, our big wheels, all of that stuff. And we could go up on top with the loading dock and race down this huge ramp into the bakery area. So those are the two things I remember most. The need for speed.
Check that out.
Get rid of the energy so you can eat more donuts.
Or not.
Or not.
Wow. It's like
so many questions.
Yeah, it's like being a child of Carol Shelby and hating cars or whatever, right? Like, fossil fuels are awful. When your dad makes
and I'm like big wheel or green machine. There's all sorts of stuff, man.
I don't think I had the green machine. I just had wasn't the big wheel the orange chassis or the orange frame or excuse me, red.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess that's some adventure.
I think grass mowing guy can be a serious deal. I think the wealthiest guy in my area for many years was a guy who started a lawn service and leveraged that into a landscaping company that leveraged into during the housing boom, it all exploded. This dude had a helicopter.
I don't regret it, and I'm not talking
it's pretty crazy.
Bad. Yeah, I don't regret it, and I'm not talking bad. In my opinion, any honest work is good work. And, as long as my taxes aren't paying for it. And if I hadn't have done that, then when I forgot my first real job, which was most of 20 years in duration, I wouldn't have gotten that job, in the interviews and stuff. So all those early times, and it's amazing what sticks with you and what you pick up along the ways and, how it helps you later in life.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Develop those work habits.
So did you have any knives as a kid? Did you collect anything like that as a kid at all?
I knew you were going to ask. So I always loved knives, but I never was allowed to have them. I don't think I got my first pocket knife until, holy cow, my brother and I kind of snuck to our local True Value Hardware, Ace Hardware. And the guy allowed us to buy, it was like a little, I think it was an Imperial multi-blade little slip joint.
Awesome.
And I think I was 14 years old.
Huh.
And so I didn't have a knife before then. And so you always fantasized.
I was reading on your website, it said you had a pellet gun instead of a knife, right?
That's the funniest thing. I actually had a pellet gun before I was able to have a pocket knife. So that's
nice.
A weirdness. Yeah.
Any idea why? I mean, they just...
Oh, my mom's a worrywart. My mom is...
Did you have
Nobody got stabbed. Nobody got cut. Nobody, there were no butter knife accidents, anything like that. I don't know. It was an irrational thing.
Just...
I was always a straight A kid.
Okay. Just make sure you didn't have like a no two-finger Jimmy cousin or something. Nothing weird.
Nope.
Huh.
Wow. What kind of pellet gun did you have? Like a pump-up pellet gun, David?
Yeah. One of the, what is it, Marksman? I think, what did they have? The 7600 or something like that. All the hollow plastic stock, and pump it up 10 times. And 10 times means 20 times. And see how much extra power you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get that last pump, you're laying on your back, just trying to
get that last one. Yeah. So even though I love knives, and I always, I'm the oldest, there's just the two of us. Oh, Mom, we want a knife. We want a knife. We want a knife. Nope. But after that, it kind of was like, okay, if you don't cut your hand off or cut your thumb off or whatever, things kind of loosened up. And I think my favorite knife of all time, even to this day, and I have two of them, is the OG Bucklight. I think it's, what was the, I think the Buck 110, didn't they have a smaller model called a Ranger or something like that? It was a slightly smaller version of the Buck 110. Yeah. And I think that was the first one they came out with the plastic handle, so a single blade lockback. So that's all I had for many years, is that Imperial slip joint and then the Buck knife. And that was that.
Truthfully, you really didn't need much more.
Yeah.
And we really still don't.
To this day, I'm a single blade. If it's a Swiss Army knife, if it's a slip joint, whatever it is, I just like the simple single blade folder. I'm not talking about current, frame lock, liner lock, tactical folders. I'm just talking hardware store, Smoky Mountain knife work type of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Something beautiful about the simplicity and smallness of a single blade.
As we're talking, I'm thinking, so why? Because I've written a few times that I've always loved knives. And I think the thing that, and I ended up with that knife. We don't know where this knife is from. It's a fixed blade hunting knife, but it's a weird configuration. It's marked Craftsman, like the Sears Craftsman tools. Stacked leather handle. It has a Bakelite pommel. And it almost has like a fighter style fighter style blade, carbon steel blade. And it was a knife my dad had. And it went from drawer to drawer to tackle box to, I don't know. And he never told us where it came from, and he's passed. And it seemed to appear about the time he came home from Vietnam. So I don't know if that's where it came from. But love that knife for some reason. It's just a pretty basic fixed blade, but it definitely has a patina and the stacked leather handle. And I think that's where I first started. Man, knives are pretty cool. Even though I couldn't have one, that was always around that we could look at or cut bait with or whatever. And that one knife probably was the biggest influence.
Was it one of the old Schrade Walden Craftsman?
I have no idea. There's nothing on it.
Oh,
I've tried to, in the past, try to go down the rabbit hole of, Craftsman fixed blade, Craftsman stack leather handle, all the terms that you might do in internet search.
Try looking that one up, because I believe they used to make some of the Craftsman stuff. It was Schrade Walden.
Schrade Walden. Okay.
After we get the episode out, David, post a picture of that baby in the Mark of the Maker Facebook group, because people come out of the woodwork with figuring stuff out.
Oh yeah, someone will know exactly what and where.
It's funny because it's
but definitely an iconic thing, right? Something you really stuck with you, and I think any kind of knife that your father has or tool that your father has that, you know what I mean, it's easy for those to become an iconic thing for a kid.
It wasn't a relationship, it was just that knife. To be blunt and honest. But and so I never had any, I want to make a knife. I've got to buy more knives. I never really had that until I was about 35 years old. So, what's that?
Wow.
20 years, close to 20 years.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Where were we? So should I continue on with just my life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but when you said you were diagnosed in your 20s, that's got to be a pretty crazy life thing, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people that age are diagnosed with cancer. What was that?
So I guess going back, going to college, early 20s, diagnosed with cancer. They, again, like I said, really knife making, the urge to collect, the want to make anything was way, way far removed from my mind because they're going to school. Ended up getting married. The cancer diagnosis happened, and they came in and they said, well, you have advanced malignant melanoma, and you probably won't see your 25th birthday. And it was stage 4 because it was already spreading. And you won't see your 25th birthday. And then the doctor walks out. Anyways, so I didn't die because I'm talking to you guys. And had a reoccurrence 2 years later. Went through all that mess again, and actually went to work for an international company related to irrigation landscape, and I will not say the name. But then stayed for almost 20 years, just shy of 20 years with that company. And primarily, again, nothing related to knives. It was all whether I installed, I troubleshot, whatever, taught classes, everything with regards to weather-adjusted irrigation that is county-wide, city-wide, statewide. It's kind of level, that kind of size of projects. And so,
wow,
kind of a technology-driven job, software and communication and indoor, outdoor. Like I said, kind of a technology-based thing.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning to me that you had something to do with like IT or technology kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was, most folks, they have sprinklers in there. Well, I don't know about you guys in the Midwest, but out here on the West Coast, Arizona, California, everything out here, everything has irrigation. So it's not like you'd see in your front yard. It's like whole highway projects, college campuses, citywide. And everything's adjusted based on weather parameters from the previous 24 hours. And so it adjusts, it rained, it didn't rain, this was a humidity, all these parameters, and does all your adjusting. And of course, along with that is the software and the communication between all the different sensors and controllers and all of those things. So that was pretty interesting. I mean, I got to travel the world, taught classes in a lot of different countries, troubleshot strange systems in a lot of different places, everything from the White House to the Bellagio. So it sounds glamorous, but it wasn't. But, interesting. And so that kind of brings me up to the knife thing. So when I was 34, I believe, I was diagnosed with a second type of cancer. And this one, they said, you're for sure going to die. All these doctors just want to kill me. They want to get rid of me. But
did you give them, I've heard that shit before?
Well, it's like I told them, dude, I have too much to do. You know, what do I got to do? What do I need to do? It's like, well, you're in pretty bad shape. And I was unfortunately the victim of the whole health insurance thing. 35, in good shape, young, at the time was in physically good health. Roll the dice. And so we all hear about these horrible death boards, the fear, all these fear mongers talk about death boards and who's going to let you live and die and stuff. Basically, that's what happened. The health insurance company says, there's a chance he'll survive or he'll die, whatever, we're not going to treat him. And it actually went every place. It was around my heart, my lungs, all in my spine, just everything. My whole torso was involved. But I had met a knife maker by the name of Cody Westcott out of New Mexico. And I haven't been able to get a hold of him, so I'm worried that maybe something has happened to him. Because he was older than me when I first met him, probably in his late 50s. So now it'd be late 60s or more. But Cody Westcott used to, back in the day, have a very good following. He made kind of a Loveless-esque style of fixed blade, maybe a little bit toward, Tom, who's that fella? He makes polished blades, stacked handles, but the handles, the last name starts with a D. It's like D apostrophe.
DeHolder?
DeHolder.
Oh,
DeHolder.
DeHolder?
Yeah.
DeAlton Holder?
DeHolder. Yes, thank you. That's why I always forget it. DeHolder, DeHalton Holder, or whatever. So anyways, kind of a mix between Loveless and DeHolder knives. And it's like, you make knives? And so he brought me a couple times, showed me, we ran into each other and showed me a folder he made, showed me a fixed blade. And it's like, holy cow, you never think of actual people making knives. But evidently it stuck.
Right.
Because the last time I was going through chemo and stuff, I put on a credit card because I wasn't working, a KMG grinder and an even heat oven. And I said, man, when I feel better, I'm going to go out in the shop and see if I can make myself a knife. And so that was about 35 years old. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm still alive. It took a little bit.
Right.
It took multiple surgeries, too much radiation, whole lot of chemo. I tell everybody I'm the healthiest unhealthy person you'll ever meet. So
right.
That's pretty crazy.
But that's like I said, it brings us to today.
So David, how did you connect with that maker that kind of got this whole spark started for you? How did you come across? Was it like a knife show thing, or was a local guy, or?
No, he, like I said, I lived in Arizona for about 10 years when, after my first diagnosis, when they said you're not going to live to 25. Well, I had a small business. Like I said, I was going to college and following in my dad's footsteps, I guess. While I was going through college, did some landscape work, landscape maintenance. I was able to sell that business and sell a house. And I was just going to go goof off. At the time, I mountain biked a lot. And my mom lived in Arizona. And so my wife and I moved to Arizona. And I met him at a convention in Tucson. And saw him 2 years in a row. Nothing knife related. And yeah. And that was, I guess, the first time it ever really stuck that, oh man, people actually make these. And so, when I was going through that, I guess evidently I just went back to my normal day job and everything was, doing the normal day job, trying to get through illness, this, that, and the other. And when I was, I think in the last year that I did chemo, I've never been one to sit in front of a computer, surf the internet, spend hours, never been a gamer, never. I couldn't care less. And I discovered blade forums. And then after reading blade forums for probably weeks on end and thinking, man, this is what Cody did. And that's when I purchased the grinder and the oven and was going to try to do it myself.
So David, tell us about that first knife that you built. Tell us how that went, what it was, that kind of thing.
Well, it's funny because last week I had a guy, he said, well, so do you still have your first knife? And it sits on my bench. And when I first got into knives, my complete and total fascination was with Wharncliffe blades. For whatever reason, everything had to be a Wharncliffe. And so my original, of course, is a fixed blade. There was a dude on Blade Forums that he was selling a medium-sized flat rate box of G10 for $40. Send me $40. I'll pack a medium-sized box full of G10 scrap and ship it to you. So it's kind of a fighter. My first knife is a 01 flat ground, because everybody has to do flat grinds. Flat grind is the ultimate in strength and sharp. I'm being sarcastic. Right. There's so much in knife making that is just so dogmatic, so insane. It's just, so my sarcasm or even a little bit of being facetious comes out. But anyway, so it's a Wharncliffe scrap G10 handle held on with screws, and it hasn't rusted yet. I think so. In August, I will have been making knives as a hobby or full time 9 years, and
wow,
I've used that knife quite a bit, and now it just sits. But plus, I live in the Mojave Desert, so we don't have a problem with humidity. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tom. I can post a photograph in the group, but.
That would be cool.
I think about the time I started, everybody was in love, and maybe it was because of the dude from Blade Forums. Everybody was using that jade green G10. And I think it was because it was industrial waste or industrial salvage. That's what the handle is. So now that's what all my sanding blocks are made out of.
There were some definite trends that went through there, different handle materials. Now, when you're talking about, where you live, do you ever have any issues with some of the more fragile natural materials moving when you ship them to more, heavier humidity type places? Does your handles ever give you issues with that stuff?
I've always noticed it's the opposite. And so, because I'm kind of a knife nut now, it's like I've bought knives from Japan, even bought when Marcus Lynn was here in Southern California, bought a knife from him, black micarta from Torrance to Hesperia, an hour and 15 minutes, and micarta actually shrunk when it got to my house.
Oh man!
So I've never had anybody complain. Yeah, I've never had any complaint about stuff leaving my house and going. Well, I take that back. I did a bolster lock folder about, I guess, early in my folder career. So about 4 years ago, maybe headed towards 5 years. And it had stabilized Kowa scales. And, that kind of pass, the bolster passing the scale, it expanded just enough that you couldn't release the detent. The detent was too tight against the blade. And so it was, not a good thing.
Yeah, I'd be very scared.
Yeah, don't freak me out. I'm just finished up a stag bolster lock.
No, I think I'd be scared sending something to you.
Well, it's funny. I had one of my early supporters, an older fella, he passed 2 years ago. I made him about 6 knives a year. But for whatever reason, he only collected Loveless-esque style hunting knives. And so he had a list of West Coast makers that, man, he would take delivery of like 3 to 6 knives from every maker every year if you could do it for him. And his whole thing, though, is he wanted to supply the wood, and he didn't want the wood to be stabilized. And so Rick sent me a block of ebony, my first experience with ebony. He's like, this thing's been sitting in my wood locker this block has been in my wood locker for, I think he said 15 years. And in 2 days sitting on my workbench, me just taking it out of the postal box, it cracked in half.
Wow.
So point taken, Michael. But it came from Oregon. So he was in Oregon, came down here, and that's just how our average is, like 10 to 15%. And 15% is super high humidity.
Yeah.
And so that's that for California weather talk.
Well, man, let's get back to shop talk. What's your favorite process in the shop at this point?
Finishing. I think
getting her done.
Getting it done. It's one of those things that I love everything some days and hate everything some days. And I think most people are that way. It depends on what you're working on, what your mood is. With me, it's how I'm feeling that day, if I barely got out of bed. And but every time you finish something and you're standing in your shop by yourself chuckling, I made that. It's just
nice.
I think that's the most exciting thing. It's funny because I have certain people I text throughout the week or the days, and you send these excited finished photos like, look what I just did. And that's probably the thing that keeps me going. It's because, like I said, day by day it changes.
Do you still get kind of giddy when you get to take that picture and post it up? I still get kind of excited, just kind of like excited hoping that someone else is going to be excited about it, I guess.
I wish I was well off, because I would make knives for free if I could, just for my personal excitement. Yeah. I'm not an internet guy. Any of you guys that follow me know I'm kind of hit and miss. I have like the worst Facebook group in the world. It's probably the most boring Facebook group you'll ever be in. I'll go weeks without posting anything on Instagram, and it's my own personal excitement. And it's, man, when you get, for me, it's me. And I just had an experience. I won't put out any name. About a week ago, somebody's, well, will you make me this knife? Yeah, I'll make you that knife. Will you do this? No. Will we do this? No. I'm, it may be one of those things that I'm shooting myself in the foot, but I make knives for me. My name's going on it. And so I turn down quite a lot of knives because I won't put materials together, because it's just not exciting to me. In my mind, exciting is a hand rub blade and green micarta. And, when you do it well, I always say to people that doing simple is hard.
Damn straight.
I don't know, just finishing that, those simple materials in a way that's not sloppy, not lazy, that's just all for me. And then you hope the customer enjoys it. You hope that, they appreciate the end product. And of course, I do more than hand satin blades with green micarta, but I hope you guys understand what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
I think learning to say no is one of the toughest things, but one of the things that an experienced knife maker learns.
It's very important, or you're going to end up with some funky looking knives that you're not going to be happy with down the road.
Well, I'd ask you to let me edit that, Tom, and that I'd say not experienced knife maker, but a mature knife maker.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of older knife makers that do crazy things. And so when you realize, holy cow, my name's going to be on this. I mean, you look at the steels we use, even the rusty old 01 and A2 and D2 and stuff. All this stuff that we use nowadays, it's going to be around 100 plus years, and my name's going to be on it. And I want somebody to be showing their grandkids, look what I bought or I acquired or I got it from my grandfather, and I want it to be cool still. Like I said, it's to me, simple will probably withstand the test of time more than all the stuff thrown together.
Oh yeah. Well,
I apologize to all the suppliers.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. We're in kind of a time of a ton of different flavors of handle materials, and I have a tough time personally with getting onto any of them. And I'll buy some, and I have some that I'm like, I've looked at it, and I'll just stare at it and be like, am I going to be happy with this 2 years from now, or am I going to be, upset that I did it? And I've sat on a couple of those that I just haven't done anything with because I don't know yet. Kind of like a tattoo where you're supposed to, look at a picture for a year or something.
When it's not even just materials, but it's stuff like I got asked to put a gut hook on a knife. I don't do that. I don't like it, so I don't want to do it. It's easier just to say no than to say yes and then not do it in a timely manner.
Well, that's an easy one to say no to. Gut hook.
Well, yeah, I agree, but I mean,
it's funny because I completely understand, and to show you how anti-gut hook I am, that's the Loveless pattern I don't have.
Oh, that's anti-gut hook right there.
That's anti-gut hook. It's worse than my anti-New York special.
Ooh, I see.
Ripping open those old wounds. Yeah, I tried to get David to put a gut hook on that Big Bear he made for me. No, I'm not doing it. I'm just kidding. I didn't ask for that.
Yeah, but it would look so totally right on it, man.
Birch is just afraid that 2 years from now, I'm going to send him a text message with a photo, like Silver Twill folder or something. And he'll just end up cringing. Damn it.
It's difficult because I see some of the carbon fibers. I'll use as an example, and I will mention the name, that Fat Carbon. I think he started out on Instagram. I think I was one of the first ones that purchased his Seamascus. It's almost like a rolled, little small rolls, and it's just black carbon fiber.
It's nice.
In my opinion, that is some of the coolest stuff.
Oh, you're the dude who turned me on to that guy.
Somebody mentioned Silver Twill. And so you have really rad carbon fiber. I even like good marble carbon fiber, or Matt Diskin's regular standard old black twill, or what's it? The standard old looking carbon fiber is so nice.
2x2.
And then you start doing all kinds of weird stuff to it. Adding colors and adding sparkles and adding. I was like, oh my goodness gracious. I don't know that I can deal with that.
No, I think, well, like you said, really good, clean, simple is not easy. And a really good example of that is some of Mayo's stuff, right? Where those knives are just awesome. And there's, people will say, oh, well, it's just 2 slabs of tie on a blade. What's the big deal? Right? It's nothing special. It's like, no, those knives are so good and clean. And to me, that was the first time I saw a knife where it was like, that knife, it isn't anything super fancy, and it doesn't have some flashy stuff on it. And it's at the same time ultra, ultra, ultra cool.
That's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Even though I'm not in my personal side of things, I'm not a super duper folder guy, but I've never seen one of Tom's knives, the designs that I don't like, and the fit and finish. Like you said, even though, oh man, that's why but simple is super hard. And having it work correctly. A lot of people cut corners. Oh, all it is going to be a, whatever blade with a little bit of hardware and some titanium. I don't have to put the same care into making it. Well, yeah, you do if you have pride in your craftsmanship.
Right.
So that's why I think one of the first, when I really on Blade Forum started looking at, well, if I'm going to do this, because at the point it was just hobby. The company I worked for, I was able to go back to work, and so deeply in debt from all the time off. It's like, man, I'm just going to do this as a hobby for my pure enjoyment, because my work weeks were typically 60, 70 hours. And the last 5 years living here in California, I covered everything from roughly San Bernardino down to the Mexico border. And so some days would be 5 or 6 hours in the truck and traffic. And so knife making was just pure release on the, Saturday, Sunday, just mental health. But talking about simple, I always thought, man, if I can just make a knife as good as Brian Good, or at the time, I think he's kind of disappeared also, but Nick Allen. And there was a whole, Charles May, Gene Ingram, those guys. It's like, man, I'll be happy. That's all I want to do is make simple, clean, 3-piece fixed blades like those guys do.
Those are some good names, right?
That stuff's, it's easier said than done. And it's crazy because it's last 3 days ago, somebody posted a Ingram knife on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Man, that guy just, it's nobody, he's like a silent master. I don't know how to put it. Those guys make knives. Remember talking to Gene one time, and just so humble, so crazy good at what they do. And they just do what they do and don't look for the limelight, and they concentrate on making good stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't Brian in our Mark of the Maker Facebook group?
Yeah.
He just posted the other day, I think.
Good dude. Really good dude.
Yeah.
Gene used to set up.
He's one of the first ones that
I was just going to say, Gene used to set up next to me at the Arkansas show years ago. Super good dude. And I think he did learn from Charles May, maybe.
Their style is so similar. I don't want to sound like sucking up, but there's that crying guy too. That was kind of an inspiration.
Thanks.
Nice.
It's interesting that you mentioned Charles May and Gene Ingram, because they were kind of inspirational to me back in the day.
I'm not looking at one. I have one of I think it's Gene Ingram's. He used to make these it was like a little fixed blade, and it was called a toenail or sunfish or something. Just a piece of steel, no handle, slabs. And I had 2 orders with him, because my first year when I became aware of knives and knife making, really 34, 35, like most people, I just went nuts buying garbage. And I use the term garbage loosely. It's like dude and rad and all that stuff. But I had to call and cancel my orders because I had just been diagnosed. And so I talked with him on the phone for quite a while. And he's like, well, I've got this one knife finished right here. And it's the first time I've tried this thing. And I'd had no idea what he was talking about. But it was just a solid steel knife, little, fits in your pocket. But he had put mosaic pins into a steel knife, no handle slabs or anything. And that was the first one he had made. And so I have that. I bought it. He didn't give it to me. But it's like, holy cow, this guy cares enough that I have to cancel an order. He offered me a knife right now. And he was so concerned about my health and everything. So that hangs in my shop. It's up above the workbench, and it's always there. So it's funny. Knives in the last 9 years have become very much like tattoos for other people. Knives mark a lot of events and time periods in the last 9-10 years for me. It's crazy because you can look at a knife and, that's when this happened, or, somebody said something nice or something. It's I've become an emotional wreck in my old age, and I can get emotional about that.
I think that's the right way to look at them. Each piece I have is something that I bought at a certain time, or it may be for a certain reason. There should be a little bit of nostalgia. Should be a little bit of sentimental value to it. I think that's just as important or I think more important than buying a fad or, something that you think you're supposed to like.
Well, my Facebook business page is Sharpworks Usable Art. And on my dilapidated website, there's that tagline, usable art. And when I got into this, very, very much, that's my knives are very much like a painting, like a sculpture, like a Ford Bronco. They're just works of art, and they should be appreciated,
Right.
yeah, not like Michael said, not a fad. And it bums me out because even though I'm fairly new to this, yeah, my collection is my, prize. They're my most prized things because, like I said, they mark times and thought processes and things that I thought were interesting or people that you've become very good friends with. And that's what the case is nowadays.
Well, and everybody's got different ways that they connect to it, right? And sometimes it's on I think sometimes it's on a continuum, right? Where it's almost like each person's own little, at the risk of sounding overly foo-foo about it, each person's own little journey, right? Like maybe you start out because it looks cool or you like this certain shape or material or whatever. And then over time, I think lots of people, the situation evolves, right? And it becomes about something else. And so I think for lots of us, I think we have the same kind of thing that you talked about, that Michael talked about, where there's pieces that, have a lot of meaning to them. And it could be because they were a gift. It could be because they were a special thing. Like you said, it could align with some kind of event in your life or, something someone did for you or whatever. And to me, that's a mature love of knives, right? Versus what oftentimes happens where people come to it and, it's like, I just want this because it's got the fanciest, craziest, gaudiest set of materials on it. You know what I mean? And that's the motivation because it looks cool.
Agree.
Okay, but yeah, someday when you kind of get far enough down the path, maybe you will, maybe you won't, because I think some people never get there. It becomes about something different, right? Where you could have something, like you said, just a straight steel knife with a mosaic pin stuck in the handle. And it's like, wow, this thing matters to me, right? It has a very specific meaning and might be even the most prized thing in your collection. You know what I mean? It's just a very interesting, it's human being stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. You just wish, as a knife maker, it's one of those things that you put so much effort and time. And I would probably challenge Michael to the Slow Maker Award or title. But it's one of those things you put so much time and effort. You want these people to love it as much as that time and effort you've put into it. And so you want that person you want it to go to a knife collector with a long attention span.
Yeah,
is the best way.
Right. Yeah, it's a good way.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that have short attention spans, and you see it a lot in the different forums and I apologize if I offend any of my customer base or whatever, but you'll see folks after a week or two, you'll see the comment, bored, need to switch it up.
Right.
Like, holy cow, man. I've never, two of my most prized, I have a Brian Good Warncliffe little fixed blade and a Razel from John Graham, of course.
Yeah.
And John Graham, it was before I started making knives. I had to have a Razel. Holy cow, I had to have one. And he answered the phone on like the second ring and chatted with them. And it's like, will you take an order? Well, I'm not taking orders. I'm not making, because there was that whole time period, no fixed blades, only folders.
Right.
And he made me a fixed blade. And holy cow. And since I believe he's a very good friend. But it's like, yeah, you want people to, I guess I start wandering. So again, forgive me, but long attention span. I'm sitting here and I have a whole cabinet full of knives right here. And those are the first ones that I see is the Graham and the Good. And it's like, oh man, how could you not keep that forever? How could you not keep those? The money's already gone. I'll pay a bill another way. So
yeah.
Anyways, that's my little thing.
Catch and release is the one that gets me.
That's a tough one.
Well, and like I said, I think it's a path, a journey, right? I was certainly that guy at one point where I bought and sold a ton of knives, and some of it was because there wasn't a good way without going to a show to be able to get stuff in your hands to see it without buying one and checking it out and then selling to be able to buy something else. But eventually, at least for me, you get to the point where it's like, I'm not buying stuff unless I really am going to keep this piece, right? Unless it's a piece I really want or from a maker that I'm very interested in or that I'm friends with or whatever. And somebody said to me a couple years ago, they're like, man, your collection's like a black hole. Nothing ever leaves. I'm like, yeah,
that's the
right.
point.
I consider that a mark of success. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to go kind of down it's kind of like a black hole, the world we live in. You hear the terms disposable. People abandon their kids, they abandon their dogs. It just, people don't nowadays have the same emotional commitment to things, people's objects that maybe they did 2 decades ago, whatever. And so it does sadden me. It does sadden me because I would love to take a step back in history. And, when I was growing up, I appreciated because we were not well-to-do. And you got the roller skates because everybody else had them, or you did. And holy cow, you slept with those things and you didn't let them out of your sight no matter what because they'd get stolen. And that's, 47 years old. That's the way I am with knives and dogs and Broncos and my wife. I got to throw that in there.
Yeah, well done.
You want us to move that to the front of the line there for you and post-processing?
Nah. I think this September is 28 years, so she understands.
Yeah, you're good to go by this point, hopefully.
All right, man, let's circle back to the shop for a little bit, and we'll finish out what I see as a 2-part question. Do you have a least favorite process in the shop, something that you just dread on the days you have to do that?
I guess I think the thing I hate the most is the noise, not of the grinder. It's not any process because I usually work in batches. And so I'll do a batch of fixed blades and 10 or 12 tangs to taper. By the time I'm to tang number 10 or 11, I'm dying. I'm hating it. And then you're done. And then it's time to, there's nothing I really, really hate because you always have a relief. Okay, 5 more minutes and I'm going to be done with this and move on to something different. The thing I do hate, this probably goes to yours and Michael's episode. You quickly realize I've been full-time, August 1st, I'm full-time 6 years. And I've really noticed the last 2 years, holy cow, man, I'm by myself way too much. And every single noise in my shop is driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So I don't use a tumbler that often, but if I use a tumbler for 2 minutes, it's like fingernails on a whiteboard or a chalkboard. The air compressor goes off. Holy cow, man, I need to get a quiet air compressor. Those are the things some days are worse than others. And it's like, man, I need to go to lunch or I need a day off or I need to go. I was going to message Sean about it. I love his yard work. I'm a yard work nut. And so, it's going and clipping some bushes or I've got my fruit trees or whatever I go talk to. I don't know. But that's probably my worst is just sometimes just being in the shop day after day and all the little noises because it kind of gets in your head.
Do you have do you
Good
listen?
thing a psychologist isn't listening to us.
Do you listen to anything while you're out there? Do you have headphones on or anything like that?
Yeah, I can't do the headphone thing.
Really?
And so I have a very large stereo and I have speakers on all 4 walls of the shop. And so my neighbors hate me. But yeah, so I get on I have to be aware. I can't listen to too much news, too many talk shows and stuff because I tend to take things too seriously. And so it's the Audible. I've always been a rabid reader. We didn't have television growing up, so the library was my thing. And so I like it because I'm being able to get back to, I think last year I started going back through all the Harry Bosch novels. I had read most of them through the years, and now there's all the new ones, and of course the Amazon series. But I love listening to crime and mystery novels and stuff, and that helps, of course. But that doesn't cover the noise in the shop. And like I said, I can't do the earbuds or the headphones or whatever.
Why-
That just drives me nuts.
Why can't you do the headphones? I found like a set of wireless noise canceling is probably the best thing that's ever.
Shuts out a lot of noise.
And I'm kind of the opposite, where I almost feel isolated so much because I put them on and I'm just in my own world. And I'll take them off and be like, holy shit, that's loud. I didn't realize it was that loud.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's some type of phobia. I don't like wearing baseball caps. I don't like wearing, I don't like anything on my head.
Yeah.
So I hear where you're going, but I just can't.
It doesn't
can't
work.
cope.
Yeah. Doesn't work then.
It's almost like I said, it's almost like that. It's just like somebody poking you all the time. It's like, oh, it's driving me nuts. So I don't know if that helps, Sean, or if that answers, because I feel honestly, I know a lot of us moan and groan about different facets. I feel like an idiot saying it. I feel so blessed that I'm alive. I feel so blessed that I don't grind every day like most of the rest of the population does. I feel so blessed that I've been fairly successful, hoping I'm not jinxing myself.
Right.
There's nothing I just hate that much.
Good.
And so
Excellent. Yeah.
there's always the good things. Like I said, there's always, in 5 minutes, the misery will be over. If you're hand sanding a blade, in 15 minutes, you're going to move on and, mark it, sharpen it, and put it together. It's always the end is in sight,
Yeah.
is I guess the way I put it.
I think the part that gets like Sean and I have talked about or before is not so much that it's hard. It's more that a process that we may know we're going to mess up, like some grinding or something like that, which I can easily jack up still to this day.
I used to really dread, now that I guess it's gone year by year. 2 years ago, I think I only made 7 folders 2 years ago in the year. And then last year it was 50-50. And this year it looks like it's going to be mostly folders. And so my stuff kind of goes back and forth. And I dreaded locks because I kind of did the Jerry thing where it was kind of freehand. You had your little ramp, you had everything set up, and you kind of freehand ground that lock face. And then I got one of Fellholter's lock grinding jigs that doesn't look like a Fellholter lock grinding jig anymore. But using the bits and pieces from that made my life so much easier.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Without my Nichols lock grinding jig, yeah, I would be a frustrated lad.
So, David, what about from the design perspective? Like, you don't have a CNC machine in the shop, right?
No.
So are your designs all done by hand?
It's on my list.
Pencil on paper kind of stuff? Or do you draw on the computer? Or?
So early on, everything was just, on a sketch pad. It's weird saying early on because we're just talking the last couple of years. And I had one case where just send me a water jetter. It's like, just send me a pencil drawing. I'll convert it for you. And holy cow, what a disaster.
Yeah.
And when I was traditionally employed, I worked with AutoCAD. I don't know why, I'm just such an idiot. I went through tens of thousands of dollars worth of Autodesk training, did tons of drawings. And it's like, why is this such a stupid thing for you to do for knife making? So for my personal stuff, I have a sketch pad in the shop, and like my last, the L&L folder, the Tonto, it took almost a year and a half because I would erase, draw until I was happy with it. And then I go put it in the computer, go draw it out in CAD, because that's the only way. I mean, I have all my titanium and stuff water jetted, and I don't think I could live without that.
Yeah.
Without water jetting, I'm saying.
Well, and then in that case, it's almost like an electronic pattern that way, right? Instead of having a traditional metal pattern or whatever, you just have something you can easily replicate or print or, you know what I mean, scale or do whatever you need to do.
Right. It's funny because I agree. The old Bob Terzola folder book, and he has this little gauge for setting his open and close on I think it was the ATCF, and it's a little fixture he has. And it's funny, if you do a good CAD drawing in the open and close position, you can basically use that sheet of paper, print off as many as you want. As it gets grungy, throw it away, print off another one. And I use that, for checking my opening and closing and lengths and different things like that, just by laying it over, at least until I graduate to a robot. That's the way I do it right now.
Right.
So, David, what really draws you to a knife? Is it materials? Is it design? Is it a combo of the two? Do you have a certain thing that you look for? You kind of your deal with a knife that'll get you every time?
So, I guess if I look at my collection, if I look at what I make, it's always, well, not always. It's always the overall knife, of course. But I love handles. And if any of you have seen that video Mikey Van Meter did a couple years back, I kind of slobber all over handles. It's funny, the first time I realized or became aware of Loveless, and I don't remember I don't recall if I mentioned this in the Loveless episode. It was I had gotten, I think the first or second time I got one of the knife annuals. They come out in August, September, something like that. And I saw a Jim Hammond fixed blade, and I cannot recall the name. I'd have to go look. But he makes that knife that looks like a 6-inch Loveless Fighter. Well, I turn the page and there's a Loveless knife there. And then you start going down that rabbit hole of, holy cow, what are these knives? And most folks, the double grind, the shiny blade, the this, that. Yeah, but once a knife is done, you can't fondle a blade. Whereas a handle is, is how you interact with a knife. And so it's the shape, it's the materials, it's the feel. I think a couple episodes back, was it Tom was talking about how he finished handles? Or was that when I was texting, with the furniture
I'm not
polish?
sure if it was on an episode or private conversation.
No, I think that was on an ep. I asked you about your handle finishing process.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I really, really dislike super shiny handles. And, Tom's suggestion of like 800, 1200 grit and then that furniture polish, holy cow, that's like a groundbreaker as far as me finishing handles, getting a finish I want. And so I guess going, back to that question, it's always number one is the handle shape on a fixed blade. With folders, I mean, I like the folders I make, but like I'm looking at a large portion of my collection right now, and there's only 3 folders, and I think there's 50 fixed blades. So I'm not
right
a super duper folder guy. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps
That's
or
similar
hinders.
to me.
No, great answer.
I really, really appreciate good blade finishes. So folks that just do a mean hand satin, even coarse, if you do a 400 grit hand satin, yeah, it might scratch a little bit easier, but if the lines are straight and it's just on point, holy cow. A good polish, good hamon, even a good machine belt, belt finish. If all the spine to edge line, everything's consistent and there's no hot spots, shiny spots, deep spots. I think that's, the blade finish, consistency, and that's just whatever you choose to do the best you can. And you can see that when you look at a knife. Man, this guy really cared. However he chose to finish that knife, it's the best that he could do.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those satin finishes I'm pretty impressed with when they get a real super clean, uniform finish across there.
I'm very picky, very critical of myself, and that kind of translates into other people's work. Handles, though, I think I got to go back to handles. That's why I'll go back to my collection too. Like the lower shelf is all Loveless shoot knives and Hunter's Loveless style. But then the top shelf is all ABS stuff. And so I'm a huge fan, even though people don't admit it. I think everybody talks about Skechers and, not giving credit to where you got your inspiration and things like that. So much in recent times, in the ABS side of things, the handle shapes came from Jason Knight. And man, Jason Knight is so good at ergonomic, incredible handle shape.
I would say him and Bert Foster, both.
No, that's it. Don't get me started. I didn't know what a sharp knife was until I got one of Bert Foster's. My top 3 sharp knives, no reflection on anybody here. A reflection on myself because I'm always working on that. Bert Foster, Jason Knight, and Jerry McGinnis.
Oh, yeah.
3 sharpest stinking knives I've ever seen in my life. Holy cow. Oh, John Graham. John Graham can look at a knife and make it sharp.
Good stuff. Hey, I've got a question for you. One of the things we were talking about before a little bit was shows, and I'm curious what was your first show and kind of what's your take on shows and what shows do you do?
Shows are rough, like I think they are on all of us, but I love shows. So, like I said earlier, I finished my first knife in August of 2010, and I'd already spent whatever the cost of the KMG and the even heat was. And so come about January, so that would be January of 11, my wife's like, well, you seem to be serious about this. We had gone in October. The first knife show I ever went to was when Dan Delavan got back the Plaza show. I don't know, again, because I don't have a very long depth or history in knife world. He evidently didn't own it, and then he got it back. But it was in a hotel down in Costa Mesa, not where it currently is. And I brought 3, not my first knife, but I brought my second, third, and fourth knife. And I brought a blank copy of Logos of the Loveless Legend to that show. And I got to meet Thad Buchanan, John Young, one of the Japanese makers. But they all signed my book for me. I have one of my books that has signatures from all the what I believe are the really good Loveless guys. And I got those guys to look at my my second, third, and fourth knife, my first hollow ground knives. Nowhere near Loveless. They were just, 3-piece knives. And so my wife had gone with me, and, then we went through November, December, and January. She's like, so are you going to do something with this? You seem to be spending all your extra time out there. Are you going to do a show? What are you going to do with this? And so I did my first show. I think they still have it. It's kind of a black hole. I apologize, but really not worth attending. I believe it's called the Pasadena Knife Expo or Blade Expo or something like that. And my first show was 6-7 months after I made my first knife.
Wow.
The last time Emerson was, it's like, who are all these people with the bright green lanyards? Who in the world is Emerson? Everybody's talking about Emerson. It's like, well, I have no idea. I just want to sell I think I went with 8 knives, and no idea who anybody was. Because seriously, I didn't know anything about the knife world. And so from then on, I've done a minimum of 3 shows a year. And so until this year, did the Blade Show, the Gathering, and then I have done a few times the California Custom Show, and I'm going to do that again this year. I had skipped it the last 2 or 3 years, I think. So I try to do as many shows as I can physically do. I like it. So the very first show that I didn't know who Emerson was, and I didn't know who all the people were with these bright green lanyards and stuff, there was a couple that came to my table, picked up one of my knives, put it down, walked away. I think there's like 5 aisles in this show. Came back a second time, picked up that same knife, put it down, walked away. They came back 5 times and looked at that knife. And they finally came back a 6th time, picked it up, and then he pulls out the money. He's like, I want this knife. I'm like, what was there a problem? Is there something wrong with it that you had to like talk yourself into? He goes, no, I was comparing. I think he had 3 or 4 or 5 knives that he was looking at, and he had to choose to buy one. Well, mine won. They came back and purchased mine. But the look in those people's eyes when they decided that knife was the right one, you can't get that anyplace else. When you go to a knife show, I think it was Blade last year, so 2000, there was a guy that I think it was the last folder I had on the table, and him and his significant other walked up, and she's like, buy it. I don't know if we can afford it. Buy it. And you could just see the guy, it was just torn between being an adult and buying. And it wasn't a cheap knife. At least in my world, it's not a cheap knife. You don't get to see the people, They look in their eyes when it's, the happiness or the yearning for that knife out of conceivably tens of thousands at a show. And that's the knife they picked. You don't get that on the internet.
Oh,
and so until I physically can't, I'll do shows. Until they outlaw shows, I'll do shows.
Outlaw shows? What are you talking about?
Yeah. You'll be subject to David and all of his exuberance and emotional glory.
So one of the shows that you're doing this year, we've talked about a few times in previous episodes or recent episodes, is the Portland show, right? And that's coming up pretty quick.
Yeah. I have 3 knives finished, working on a couple more. I think I leave on the 10th of July because I drive. I think it's a 16-hour drive. And because my wife can't travel.
Oh, man.
I just get in the truck and cruise and take a couple days of me time. And
3 knives done with 2 weeks ago is pretty good in my book.
Well, I'm until my mishap and heat treating today. Tomorrow I would have had close to 7 done. But, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now, what's the name of the show?
It's the Northwest Hand-Built Invitational in Portland. I think it's the
Jay Marsh's show.
Yeah, the 12th they have the social. I think that's Friday evening. The 12th they have the kind of the social get together, and then Saturday evening, the 13th, they have the actual knife show.
I'm sad I'm missing that one. I really want to check that out.
Yeah.
It's one of the most incredible venues because unless he's moved it, because there was some, I don't know what the deal was last year. There was some concern about where we held it or where he held it. But it was in a late 1800s, early 1900s waterfront warehouse in Portland. It's just like a block from the water. The beam, it's like old school, like a warehouse. You think that it's going to be on the Big Valley or, one of these old Westerns, and you're going to get shanghaied and put on a ship to China or something. The beams in this place are incredible.
Right.
Just soaking up the ambiance of the building is incredible.
There's something to be said about that. We put on a little Springfield show here in just like an art gallery, and being surrounded by art while you have your knives out. There's something incredible about that makes it such a better type of show to me. More exciting, I guess. More fitting, maybe.
I think I would agree with you. Other than, and it's no complaints, just, I guess, the old, the hotel or banquet room, it is what it is. You're just there for business. It's loud. Yeah. It's just, so having a cool place is, or almost making it a destination. Jade's trying to do is, like I said, the social thing on Friday. So it's like a 2-day thing. If you're coming from out of town, it can be kind of a mini vacation. And yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the three that you got done, David, they look cool. One's stag, one's some kind of funky old micarta, looks like, right? And one that's tie handles.
Yeah, I haven't done the good photos yet. Like I said, I'm not super duper on the internets. And I kind of going back to one of the earlier questions, I like kind of showcasing a material instead of multi. So one of them, I'm in love with the tight twist Damasteel, not the Damacore, but just the tight twist pattern. And so I'll do a titanium handle with Chad's Mokutai accents, drill some holes in it. See, when it's closed, you can see the Damasteel through the handle. And then it has the Mokutai accents. Or I always say I was in love with the micarta before everybody else thought it was cool. So I've been stockpiling stuff and, this will work if I can get a knife this size. So the micarta one is end cut linen with a stripe through it. It's an old single stripe linen micarta, but it's end cut on top of it. So yeah, I like to just showcase. So that's just a simple hand satin blade so that the micarta is showing off. Because I think I have 3 knives worth. Once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah. That's a good looking knife.
And then stag, of course.
Right.
I wish there was a whole lot of that, a whole lot more.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's hard to find.
Well, you can find it, but it's just not good quality. And I think, like you were showing your haul from Blade, and it's like, wow, he can actually pick stag. Because most folks can't. Most folks, it's like, oh, stag. Okay. Yeah, no, that's no good. Oh, but it cost me $150. Yeah, throw it away.
Right.
But it's inch wide and half an inch tall, round.
Yeah.
That will not work.
Yeah.
Nope.
It's kind of like wood. If you had, you have such small amount of landscape on a knife handle to use wood. So like koa, I love koa. If you could get a piece of koa that will look good on a knife handle, would be the most expensive chest of drawers ever to be built. And so, you have to get the best of the best of the best to make it look good on that little tiny knife handle. And so I'm saying it's hard. It's hard. You go through board feet, and you get an 1.5 by 5 inch piece of wood out of that will look good on a knife handle. And people do not understand that.
Yeah, I used to work with a guy that was a custom guitar builder. And so part of the deal was I was sort of like his guy dealing with custom order customers. And so I worked with a couple different wood brokers. And that was always the hard thing with that whole deal, right? Was, these were people that specialized in musical instrument wood. So super highly figured maple and walnut and, curly mahogany, really unusual stuff. Right. And, that's exactly what those things were, right? They were, the 0.1% of the 0.1% of the population of that species of wood that had been picked over to the nines to be these really ultimately killer pieces. And it was not cheap, right? I mean, especially big chunks, right? To make like guitar tops or something out of. And, I had a guy that I was working with this custom builder, and he was like, oh, I want a 1-piece super quilted maple top. I'm like, dude, this is going to be like a $1,200 piece of wood. And he's like, no, it's maple. I can get it down at the lumber store. I'm like, well, and go get it at the lumber yard, man. What you want is like some kind of freak of nature piece of wood, and it ain't cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and for me, at least working with wood, what I found is you have to know what you're putting it on, because you don't need figure in the whole 5.5 inch piece.
Right.
Work with what you got too. I mean, it's interesting. I have fun with natural materials, but a lot of people seem to not really understand how they work.
No. And you have to be aware of how big the figure is. It may be too big. The pattern may be too big for the knife you're putting it on.
Exactly.
Or just like the way you contour handles, the way I contour handles, a flat, 1.5 by 5 scale. Holy cow, that's beautiful. And then you round it. Where did it all go? That difference in shape from flat to rounded, it can go completely, it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The stack stuff messes with me quite a bit. I haven't done any of that in a long time just because of that stuff. And then I have to be very aware of where I'm sending it.
Yeah, it's difficult.
And no one asked me to make it.
Right. So, one of the things we talked about earlier with the sort of the collecting side of things and the short attention span deal, we've had this thing over the last few years where Instagram has just exploded. And I think it's sort of a weird double edge because it's exposed a huge additional audience to this whole world of knives and EC stuff and whatever. And it's also this, I mean, Instagram is sort of the ultimate short attention span social media where like there's a picture with a very limited amount of text and it's gone from your feed in an hour, right? Because so many other things are coming across. And so it's created kind of this hyper speed short attention span thing that has resulted in massive expansion of the market, I think, right? There's so many makers anymore. I mean, I don't know how many times, we'll come across a picture that is from a maker that I've never even heard of before that has, 80,000 followers and my books are closed. And it's like, dude, I've never even this person doesn't even exist in the show scene, right? I've never heard of this guy before, but somehow there's this big chunk of a market that is supporting all these things. And I know you're a student of the history of this thing and kind of watching how things are changing over the time. David, do you have any thoughts on like, what do you think in my opinion, we're kind of in a weird state right now with the whole knife world. And I'm not sure I know exactly where it's going. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts or perspective on that?
I think it's, we're all being conditioned that just for the world in general, life in general, to look at it and move on. And I don't know that I have a take on it, I guess, from day one, because I'm very fortunate that I've had a lot of older, what I call true hardcore collectors that have supported me from day one. And I talk to those guys on the phone and I listen to the history and try to absorb because, man, I'm every day while I'm sitting here, I'm getting texts. Oh, did you see this? It's like, I don't even know who that is. An old maker, because they weren't in the internet time. I didn't know they existed. So now I have a rabbit hole to go down as, I'm looking at my phone. So I'm always trying to educate myself. And the only way I can think to combat some of the short attention span or maybe the flipping and it goes along with going to shows, I guess. I apologize for kind of talking in partial sentences, but you gotta be a person to people. That kind of, when you're a person to people, then I think they're more willing to support and look at what you do and have maybe a deeper affection for it if they understand who you are. But also, man, I hate texting. I hate emails. I hate, this morning I was talking to another business person, but it's like, I'm calling you because I hate email. And we'll do 5 emails that we can do in one conversation. And so I always try to talk to people. And if I'm talking to people, I try to educate. It kind of goes along with earlier in the conversation, people asking me, well, will you make this knife with this, this, and this? Nope, nope, and nope. And then, well, it's not just a nope. This is a reason why I won't do that. And these are my influences. And this is why. That's the only way I can come up with to try to combat it. And I hate to use the word combat it, but it's the truth. Because I don't live my life minute to minute or second to second. I am in this, what is it? They say it's a marathon, not a sprint or whatever it is. I try to get everybody else that I deal with to kind of take a breath and do the same thing. So I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts and how I kind of deal with it in what I do. And, going to shows, like I said, you become a real person. You're not the guy on Facebook that posts memes. You're a real person with a real family and you can shake hands. So it ties people to you. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing because, and I think some of it has to do with perspective. To us, it matters because we like that, right? We like the idea of going to a show and meeting a maker or a customer or a peer or a fellow collector or whatever, and having that personal connection with people. That's a value, and it's something that we put high on the value scale. And so I think my perspective tends to be, I'll look at people that exist only in social media environment and don't do shows. And we've talked about this, on recent episodes about why it's important to do shows, right? And we had that in some of the interviews that we did in the Post Blade episode. But I think customers don't always care about that. And that's kind of a plot twist thing for me, right? Because it's like, really? They don't care? I care. Well, obviously they must care too. And maybe they don't.
But that's my point. That's my point, is you make them care. If you just went through your whole life waiting for everybody to come around to your way of thinking, they're never going to do that. So you got to make them. And, that's, and I'm not, this is the way I did it when I was traditionally employed, how I kept customers, how I got jobs, how I did, you make them believe that you're the best, and you make them believe that you have what they need. And they, and by doing that, there's quite a few folks in my short career as a knife maker that I've been able to, I early on, I was like, oh, I want what Billy Bob got. No, I'm not going to make you a same spitting knife as Billy Bob got, because that's boring to me. I already made that knife. And so you talk to them and you get them to understand why you're not going to do it. And hey, there's other choices and other finishes and other models. And have you ever looked at this maker's? I've done that too. Steer them to another maker. And all of a sudden you see a perspective change. You see people all of a sudden that, oh man, there's more to this than just that knife that Billy Bob has. And I guess that's where I'm going. You kind of have to take people, what's the old adage? I guess it's not the old adage. You can lead them to water and then you got to force them to drink.
Right.
Instead of the opposite. At least that's my perspective. And it's, I don't know. I'm not complaining right now.
Well, man, we know that you have a pretty interesting project coming up, the Civilware thing. Would you care to talk about it a little bit?
Well, it's not a project per se. I've worked Civilware, like Civil War, a play on words with Civil War and silverware. The other part of my knife making life is the engineer, co-designer, a materials guy, project manager for Jeff Rowley, the professional skateboarder, in his company Civilware. And so I think last week we were just shooting a promo in my shop, which is good for the whole knife world. It's between Civilware and Yeti, the cooler company. And it's the day in the life of a professional skateboarder. And so he goes from shooting for a van spot, the shoe vans, to scouting game because he's an avid hunter, to my shop and doing some knife work. And so anything I can do to perpetuate and push the knife world, I'm doing. And right now we have 2 projects, 2 folders in the works that hopefully will be out in the next 3 or 4 months. And so that's what I'm doing. And this week getting ready for the Portland show. And then after that, I guess it's the gathering.
Right.
Very, very cool, man.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for you. I'm a dog guy. It's in my logo. I love dogs. We've got 3 at the house. You are a dog guy. Tell us about your dogs and what kind they are and that kind of stuff.
I said a little bit ago, my wife and I have been married for 27 plus years. Very, very early on, we, instead of buying puppies, getting puppies, we started taking in dogs, pound dogs. And it seemed like we always were taking in problem dogs. And being out here on the West Coast, I've never lived on the East Coast, never lived in the Midwest. But there's a huge problem with the dogs of the moment, the short attention span. If Paris Hilton has it in her purse, I got to have it. If Jesse James has it in a shop, I've got to have it. So early on, we had boxers that transitioned to Rottweilers and Pit Bulls. And now the last 11, 12 years, it's been 100% American Bulldogs. I think that's the longest I've seen in a breed. Between blue pits and American Bulldogs out here on the West Coast, the pounds, the rescues are just overflowing with them. And so we have 3 right now, and we give them the forever on. That's a max. Well, we could have more, but for our household, 3 is the most we can have. And we have one that's about 8, one that's 4, and then one we took in October. We think she's just a little bit over a year old. And that could be a full-time job. Getting 3 dogs, we know for sure one was abandoned. Mocha May, when she came to us in October, it looked like she had gotten attacked by a pack of coyotes. She's just a scrappy, a very small dog for an American Bulldog. But putting 3 dogs together that you don't know their history can be a full-time job, but love them to pieces. So that's our dog thing. Wish I could take them with me every place. They'd be my mascots. Well, all my
right.
Instead of my face on Facebook and Instagram, it's always my dogs. They actually have their own Instagram account. So I'm just a moron, a retard when it comes to dogs.
Yeah. You should have had the dogs do the silverware promo for you, David.
Yeah. Well, nah, they don't like all of a sudden a whole crew. They don't like all of a sudden having a bunch of people in their domain.
Yeah.
But it's funny because of my association with Jeff the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years. I'm always interacting with videographers and photographers and stuff. And so we have all these pro photos of the dogs that, let me get a picture. And when they're one-on-one, it's funny. And you think, oh man, I have photogenic dogs. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So you're into the Broncos, aren't you? And I'm talking about the trucks, not the team.
I am.
Unless you are.
Yeah. I am not a football guy. Never been football, never been baseball. Until recently, I was a hardcore Ford nut. And then if you break it down even further, it's the Ford Bronco, the 66 to the 77 Bronco.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, those are the
I
only
have
ones.
2 of them in boxes. Yeah, I have one in the middle of my shop and one on the outside of the shop that I jokingly or facetiously call my 401ks. There was one in one of the Facebook groups, completely updated, modernized, I think 2 days ago, $213,000. And it's like, wow, man.
Dang.
Yeah, man.
If I could just make one, if I could get one. Well, it's all of Hollywood. All the Hollywood, when Chip Foose did his on that one on overhauling, and then all the celebrities bought them. It was my first vehicle when I was 16. I had a 67. And holy cow, it was the worst thing I never thought I'd be able to afford another one. And then in the weeks prior to like in the month prior to me moving from Arizona back to California, I came across 2 of them for the grand total of $3,000. And one was a frame off. The frame's all been painted. It's all been rewired, but there's no motor in it or anything like that. And so my last deal with cancer slowed those projects down, but, getting back on my feet and starting to look at those again.
Yeah, right now, those 2, you have like $1 million in today's market. It's just crazy.
Right.
Well, I was, you have the Icon, they're doing everything. They just released a GMC. They did, but their of course claim to fame was the modernized old Bronco. And I think just to walk into their shop, if you have the bare bones Bronco to start with, is like $300,000. But then it drives like a modern truck. So, everything is optimized and electric and runs right and steers right and everything. But I fell in love with those because my little brother had a CJ7 and I had the Bronco. And man, Jeeps could not touch a Bronco. At 70 miles an hour on the freeway, on a dirt road, no matter what you did, a Jeep cannot touch a Bronco. And so they've always had a soft spot in my heart.
Very cool. So what's your intent or plan then, David, with those? Where would you want to go? Are you going to restore, take them back to original kind of spec, or do the modernization thing? What's your plan?
The one that was already started as a frame off, that body is in such good shape and everything was good underneath it, that I'd like to just do a restoration. Maybe modernize a little bit, but take it back to kind of original glory. And it's a half cab. So that's even more impetus to take it back to more of its stock.
Yeah.
The one that's in the shop, holy cow, when I first started getting into it, somebody had taken an oxyacetylene torch and brass and decided to try to do body work. I guess they thought brass and lead were the same thing. And so that's going to be just a toy. I've got, again, when I was traditionally employed and before I had my last cancer deal, I had been stockpiling parts. And so it was going to be more of just a rock crawler, desert racer, because that was my thing, is just the off-road stuff. And so it'll be just more of a toy. And I'll never get the money back from the parts, so I might as well, move forward with it. I'm saying as a toy, because you'll never get what you put into a full chrome ollie 9-inch rear end that's trussed, full floating 40 spline, blah, 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 blah. And so you might as well use it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Well, very cool. Usually right around this time in an interview episode, we go off into some bonus question kind of stuff. I know Michael's got one he always likes to ask about movies. He's a movie junkie.
I'm like David. Growing up, we didn't have much in the way of TV. So when I got older, loved me some movies.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Do you do much with movies? And if so, what's your favorite movie knife?
Oh, movie knife.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it could be one that's used before. Don't worry about that.
You're asking the guy that you're talking to the guy that's never seen Star Wars. I've never seen.
What about book?
Cow.
You're a big crime fan.
Let's do the book. So if anybody's ever read, and I repurchased it on Audible, I believe it's David Morrell. And David Morrell has an affinity for knives in his books. And I'm looking at my Audible library right here. Emerson's. And there's one title where the assassin bad guy in the book, every single one, he's, on the lam, if you will, and they're trying to catch up with him. He uses the name Buster Warinsky, R.W. Lovelace. I think there's DeHolder. Basically, the who's who of the old school knife world are in this book. And the Here it is. David Morrell, The Naked Edge. And the cover of the book is an old San Francisco style Bowie.
Very cool.
And so I guess I would say that book. It's kind of a pulp book, but David Morrell's books are pretty good. And Audible, I guess it's one of those things that you're subject to whoever is doing the narration. That's the bummer.
Yeah.
Sometimes the narration can kill it for you.
Good answer.
Yeah, in a similar vein, do you have a guilty pleasure knife? A knife that you don't like to admit to actually liking?
But we want you to admit to it on the podcast.
You got to own it at some point. We've all done it. We've all owned our bullshit. You know?
It's okay, David, because nobody actually listens to this podcast anyway. So,
yeah. So I still have it, and they pop up on eBay every once in a while. It's when I first started with the knife making and blade forums and all that stuff, I think it's called, I believe it's Finish and Origin. It's a red plastic handle, butterfly style knife. And in some groups, they call it the CIA folder. And it has one of the best steels and blades that I've ever used in my life, even to this day. And it was a production knife of some, and now it's a collector's thing. I'll have to post a photograph in the group for you. But to this day, even though it's of the butterfly style knife, it was not meant. It doesn't flip. It doesn't bear. It's tighter than tight can be. But I'm surprised one of you guys.
Yeah, I remember those.
Does that have an injection molded handle? And the two handle parts are injection molded.
Yeah, and they're either red or black.
I've only seen the black. I haven't seen the red. I know the knife you're talking about. I had one when I was a kid.
The Hackman?
And like I said, Hackman. That's it.
That is an interesting one to pick.
I'm duck going right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. It looks like it should fling around like a butterfly, but it don't.
It does not. It's a super, and so like if you do a Google search or internet search, like the first thing that comes up is Hackman folding knife, military, CIA. And there's huge numbers of collectors for this thing. And I got mine brand new. So I guess I lied. So it was that Imperial slip joint. It was the Bucklight. And then this. They were selling them for a very short time out of Brookstone. And I think it cost like $20 or something like that. And it holds an edge and is so thin. That was my camping knife growing up. I love that knife. And because I have disdain for butterfly knives and all that stuff, like any good knife maker. I'm joking. Jeez. I always forget my dry sense of humor and my really dry delivery get me in trouble. But I really love that knife, and I still have it to this day. And so, yeah, I would say that's it.
Yeah, check that out. The Hackman Finland CIA butterfly knife. Huh.
Very cool.
So what's the CIA angle? Where's that come in? Is it the idea that the blade stashes inside the handle?
I believe it was supposed to be, if I'm thinking back, it was supposed to be the fact that it was all kind of self-contained, safe edge, it folded up, those big plastic handles. You could have a firm grip on them. They weren't, if you were in cold weather, it wasn't, freezing type of situation. There was I'd have to go down there again, and I don't have the time. But evidently that Hackman, a lot of their knives were supposedly furnished to intelligence groups, not just that one model. But yeah, it's just a good knife.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a little flashback for me there.
And it has nothing to do with the CIA part of it. It's just, for me, it was just, I was always amazed at how sharp that stinking thing was. And it really kept going.
So, David, I've got a question for you. If you could have a day in the shop with anyone, living or dead, who would you go with? I think I know, but I'll ask anyways.
I got a guess on that too.
Well, you guys are going to make me so, holy cow. You guys are getting me all teared up. So I would love to just have one more day with Jim Merritt.
Yeah.
That's what I figured you'd say.
That would be, yeah, that's, yeah. Moving on.
Yeah. No, that's a great one. I think we all kind of would figure that. All right. Well, you guys got any other questions for David?
I don't, not off the top of my head. I went into this not knowing a lot of your history, David, and I found this very interesting, and it kind of filled in the blanks for me.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a long 15 minutes.
Time warps.
It does. That's every one of these interview episodes goes this way. And everybody thinks they have not that much to talk about, and somehow it turns into a couple hours. It's kind of wild how it works. David, do you have any questions for us?
No. And I have Tom's phone number, so I text him during the week. I have your phone number. I text you.
Yeah.
Michael doesn't answer my messages. So I don't know.
Freaking caller ID, man. I hate it.
Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity. It's very uneasy talking about yourself. And I don't know, when it comes to knife making, I think that I just am scraping the surface, and I don't know. I don't think that, I feel like I'm always floundering. So I appreciate everybody and everything. And yeah, just thank you.
No, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you joining us. It's clear that it's a very personal thing for you. And I think it's a very personal thing for all of us, at least on the show here. And so I think we all can identify with that. So thank you for talking with us about it and kind of letting us learn a little bit more. I think it'll be interesting for people to hear, and kind of like the earlier conversation that we had. I think when we talk about stuff like that, that's part of telling the story, and that story helps people understand a little more that it's not just a commodity. It's not just a thing to buy and turn around. It's some of the guys that make these things put meaning behind them as well. So,
oh yeah, it's human beings. Even if you have a Haas, even if you are still old school and have a manual mill, or if you're just super old school and use the drill presses, we're all human beings, and we're all trying to support a family, and most of us are just trying to carve our way through life.
For sure.
Truth.
Yep.
We'll all get through it.
Yep. One way or another.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So I guess the only other thing we should mention here at the end of the show is, we started this Patreon thing just not so long ago, right after the Blade Show wrap-up episode. So the patreon.com is this website where people can donate to support an artistic endeavor or a project or whatever. And we set one up to support the show. We've had very nice response. We've got a dozen or so people signed up on Patreon and have offered to help send us a little bit of cash to keep the show going. And we really want to just say that we appreciate everybody who's done that. Certainly, I think more than I expected in the time frame we've had to do it. And I wanted to also give a little shout out to our very first patron, the very first guy that signed up with us, a guy named Matthew Beauvais. And he's a software engineer. He's a hobby knife maker, and he's a friend of the show, Nick Rossi. And so he heard about the Mark of the Maker through Nick and kind of started listening to us very early on. And Matthew was the very first guy to sign up with us. So
high five,
Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
And Matthew's part of, we have some different tiers of support that people can sign up for on Patreon. Matthew's part of our collaborator tier, which is kind of the highest tier. And the cool part about that is there's some behind the scenes info and some insights about what we're going to do, and a little crystal ball action on what's coming up on Mark of the Maker, and some sound clips and other stuff that we share with that collaborator tier. So Matthew's part of that. So, hey, thanks for stepping up. We really appreciate it. And like I said, we have a number of people now that are signed up. So thanks to everyone who's done that. And If you're interested, go to patreon.com. You can search Mark of the Maker, or it's just patreon.com/Mark of the Maker, and that'll take you to the Patreon page. All right. Well, Portland show's coming up. David's doing. I don't think any of us are going to that. I was hoping to get to it this year. It sounds like a great show. It doesn't look like it's going to work out. We got some stuff going on with kids and travel and some other things. So it doesn't look like it's in the cards, but I got to get to that one sometime for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. A lot of really good makers going there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's low pressure, pretty laid back.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I mean, low pressure once you're there.
Right. Well, and the social event thing is really cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. So that is a nice dimension to add to the show. So it sounds like
sounds
you're doing
pretty
a great
cool
job with it. Yeah. All right. Well, we're actually going to roll up on a pretty, for us, big milestone from a stats perspective, from a number of downloads kind of perspective. So you're going to see some stuff from us about that, and we'll get that out. Little announcement once we roll over a surprisingly big number for us. Makes me scratch my head a little bit. I always joke that nobody listens to the show, but apparently they do, at least based on the data at hand. So sorry, David, people are going to hear about your CIA knife.
Mm-hmm.
That's the unfortunate reality.
If you want one, guys, get one
Is that
now.
bad?
Yeah, get it now.
Get it now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I have the old one, the original one I bought.
Yeah,
Plus
I mean
it
the
came
other
from
guys.
Brookstone. Does Brookstone still exist?
Yeah, I don't know if they do or not. But yeah, that Sid Latham book got blown up and some other stuff. Somehow that ended up driving people to buy stuff. So
Brookstone still exists.
yeah.
Podcast
You guys are
influencers.
becoming influent. That's what I was just going to say, influencers.
I fear for the future of America if that's the case. But yes. All right.
It's all
Well,
good.
David, thanks again for joining us. Once again, I have to say thanks for all the help with that Loveless episode. That was a great one.
Yeah.
I think it's an episode we all feel proud of and happy about. And we got lots of great feedback about that one as well. So we really appreciate your help with that too.
Thank you. Should I jump up and down? Is thank you enough?
Yeah, no, I could visualize you jumping up and down as you said it. Yeah, that's enough for me.
Assume that's what you were
Okay.
doing.
Okay.
Possibly waving your arms and stuff. I get it. Well, I think that's it for episode 29. Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening to David's knife making journey with us. And as always, thanks for listening.
Yeah. See you on the 3-0.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.